So here we are at a meeting show in London. I'm here with Josh Margo, who's with Canis International, doing lots of big association conferences. And I just heard that you did a great session on marketing strategy, and more specifically about storytelling. So I thought, let's ask him a few questions, and let's get some good stuff for the viewers out there, the meeting planners, meeting professionals. Give us a little overview of your session.
So the basic idea was, how do we sort of build a story, the starting points of building a story, and how do we break it down? I think most of the outlets that we have give us, very specific requirements. Whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, we have a very specific way of how we have to implement, the marketing of our product or our event. And therefore, taking a story is really important of, how do we build the whole story and then cut it up into all the different outlets that you want to use it for. And one of the main things that I think that I wanted to get across was that we get to sort of this bottleneck where we ask this question, what am I going to do with you? You have an audience, a group of persons that you need to market towards, and which direction are you going to go in? And taking that story and making it personalized to a group of people is a real big challenge for marketing people these days.
Okay, so storytelling in a session is also something that I've heard and seen a lot, and then I see people speakers in a session that tell the story of somebody that had an accident and struggled and then came back and was successful. Somebody else's story. Does that count? Is that the kind of story you're talking about?
Yeah,
or?
Definitely. It's really one of our things that you want to include in a session is hearing the stories about a success, a challenge, how did they overcome it, right? Personalizing it really allows somebody to connect and engage to what the person's talking about at a much higher level. One of the things that we said is that if you're sitting around in a bar, right, and you're a group of guys, group of girls, everybody's talking, and they come up, so the first person comes up with a story. You remember that happened? I was traveling, and this happened to me. And what happens? The next person starts to one-up them. Oh, I had this story, right? And so how does that actually function? Basically what happens is that as you're telling the story, the other person is thinking of their story.
Uh-huh.
And they're trying to figure out how they relate. And in an educational, format, that's really important because you want the person in the audience to relate to what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And when they're telling a story, their brain is thinking of how the story worked in their head. How did it work differently when it happened to me? And then they start listening to the little details of how they had their story and how is it different, and then they start comparing it.
So that's a little bit of the psychology behind storytelling, and right. I find the science for meetings and events fascinating. I just learned that somebody's writing a book about the psychology in events, so I'm looking forward to that. So how does it work? I mean, strategically speaking. So you choose like a story for your entire marketing campaign and then stick to it, or how does it work?
Well, I came up with the idea that what really you want to do is get about 5 or 6 people from your company, sit in a boardroom, and have somebody tell a story of a user experience. When you're at the event, speak to somebody about it, talk to them about it, engage a bunch of different questions. And then you get feedback from them, and then you present that to about 5 or 6 people, and you try to build the entire story. Try to include as much detail as possible, right? And the example that I did in my session was you take a 3 to 5 minute story, and then you break it down into a 1 minute story, and then you break it down into a 1 sentence story. And then the challenge that you have is to break it down into 1 word. Right now, before you tell them what the 1 word is, you get everybody around the table to come up, what is your 1 word, right, of that story? And then you see all the different points of view of what their story is about. What is the essence of the story? And then you could start of now go from the whole to the parts to the 1 word and start implementing into the different advertising, whether it's a billboard. What's the 1 word you want to have on a billboard? Mm-hmm. What's the 1 sentence in an email that's going to catch somebody's eye? What's the Twitter that you're going to do? So all these little things is really 1 story being broken down into small little parts.
I think that's a wonderful tip that we can all apply, I guess, to a certain extent. And I thank you for that.
Pleasure.
And enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.